Welcome into the podcast, everybody. Rockets get their fourth straight win, beat the Mavericks at home in Houston, 110-102. A game that was not pretty. As Ime Udoka said, we were in the mud tonight. Very reminiscent of the Detroit game where the Rockets did lose. But the good news is they don't lose this one tonight. Pull it out. This was a depleted Mavs squad. You could also look at the Rockets without, obviously, Fred and without DFS and, of course, without Jabari Smith Jr. tonight, who sat out probably for one game just to rest an injury. Rockets, Ben, just you were at the game. You know, we were texting back and forth, sweating it out. This was kind of some scary moments, but they pull out the W.
Look, I choose to think that it's offsetting one of those two losses in the first week of the year, because let's be clear, they didn't deserve to win tonight. They shot below 30% on three. The phrase I used several times throughout the game was regression to the mean. I don't think they're as bad of a shooting team as they were a year ago by any stretch, but the numbers they put up through 5 games, the Kevin Durant effect, I mean, that has helped them some, but are they going to shoot 45% on threes all year? Is Steven Adams going to be a lights-out free throw shooter? Like, no, some of this was just getting off to a hot start through the first 5 games of the season, and it came crashing back down to earth tonight. And, you know, to their credit, they did score 21 points in the final 7 minutes of the game. So when it was winning time, it was a little bit of a struggle on defense. Offensively, they did execute, but for the game as a whole, 25% on free throws, 25% on threes, 9 of 36, 65% on free throws, 13 of 20. Those gaudy numbers to start the year, it feels like those, or no, I'm looking at the Dallas box. So almost identical, but Houston was 8 of 29 from three, so 27.6%, and 20 of 30 from the free throw line. Apologies for getting those flipped. But the bottom line is this was a bad game from three. It was a bad game from the free throw line. The defense was hit or miss, and yet you found a way to win, even when it wasn't going your way, even without Jabari Smith Jr. Now, the Mavs didn't have Anthony Davis. Kyrie Irving's out. Like, this is nowhere near a full-strength team. This is not a win that you feel good about, and I doubt the Rockets are going to be the number one offense in the NBA after tonight. But all in all, look, if someone had offered you 2 weeks ago tonight, if someone had gone to you and said, hey, would you take a 4-2 start through the first 6 games, 2-1 at home, 2-1 on the road, your splits are going to be roughly, top 3 or 4 on offense, top 10 to 12 on defense, no major injuries other than the 2 you already knew you had, being Fred VanVleet and Dorian Finney-Smith, I think everybody would have taken it, knowing the upheaval in the offseason, knowing the pieces that you were trying to integrate, knowing that you weren't fully healthy out of the chute. Like, it's a weird path how they got here, but I think in the NBA over 82 games, there's going to be lots of peaks and valleys. And so all in all, 4-2 through 6 games, 4-game winning streak. It's not a pretty one. You needed a little bit of luck from a Dallas team that missed some threes that they probably should have made and didn't have Anthony Davis due to the calf strain, but in my opinion, it sort of offsets the fact that you probably deserve to win one of the OKC or Detroit games and you didn't, and now you're 4-2 and you're probably where you should be.
Yeah, this is a really good Rocket team. They didn't play up to their capabilities tonight. You nailed it, starting out with the 3-point shooting. It's definitely somewhere in between. They were going to regress to the mean, but through 3 quarters, they were 5 of 25 tonight. It was just flat out nasty. They were very, very fortunate. I mean, part of this is defense, of course, but very fortunate the Mavs themselves, 9 of 36, 25% from 3-point range. Rockets lose this game if they give that up. Of course, they win in a blowout if they're knocking down their threes on their own. KD was the guy who set the tone in the last game. Absolutely was awesome, super efficient. Tonight really struggled with his shot, but did end up hitting, and I'll play these here, back-to-back triples, in the fourth quarter that were really big. You can see them here. That got him going. A lot of these guys, Sengun ended up having an efficient night, 26 points, 11 boards, 10 of 20 shooting. And I'll play another clip as well where he hit a big shot with 1:35 left to go. But I thought there was just like that mixed bag with all these guys. Like, they all had pros and cons tonight. Sengun in particular was something we probably want to talk about on the side, but he had a good offensive game, but really from the get-go, they were targeting him tonight. I don't want to say hunting him or whatever, but just when they would get switches, they would attack particularly PJ Washington. And in a way, their defense was kind of missing Jabari, just as sort of that weak side rim protection.
100%.
Yeah. Not that he's, this elite shot blocker, even though that 4-block game the other day would tell otherwise. But he, he was definitely missing there, I think, in that part. And so they were kind of attacking Sengun, and he did, he held up at times, but a lot of times the rim protection just wasn't there. And that was, kind of an issue. But of course, like I said, he had the big play, which I could play here. That put the Rockets up 3, and in essence was the difference of the game. The Rockets up 1 here with like I said, 1:35 to go, spins past Gafford, which he's done many times on Daniel Gafford. And it was a great play by Sengun. So, that was kind of the give and take with him. But, I just want to chalk the game up or, just push it off to the side as in like it was ugly, but they get the W. Now they go on to Memphis before, setting the stage for San Antonio.
Yeah, I think the reality is you weren't as good as you looked Saturday night when you shot like 65% from 3 and were otherworldly from an efficiency perspective, and you're not as bad as you look tonight. It's probably a balance of the two, and you were due for a little bit of a regression to the mean game, and thankfully this one came in a win. There's a comment from the chat that I want to point out. I don't understand why Ime plays zone so much when Dallas was carving us up. It goes back into the whole conundrum with this team, which is that Steven Adams is objectively one of its best players. He is very impactful, but the double big can be very hit or miss in terms of its implications for the team as a whole. And I thought in this game, there were moments where it worked. The rebounding advantage, especially in the third quarter, as the Rockets built a little bit of a buffer, was very useful. But then in the fourth quarter, I felt like this could have been put away earlier, but the Rockets playing with the zone, and it's not always the double big, but oftentimes it's the double big that leads to that zone. It led to Dallas getting a couple of threes that allowed them to maintain contact. And it's sort of a double-edged sword if you're playing a lesser opponent. Yes, in theory, you get enough rebounds that you want to eventually just sort of bully them the way you did against the Raptors the other night. But if you're giving up threes, that's also the ticket to letting an outmanned opponent hang around. And I think that's sort of what happened in this one. And so that's sort of the give and take. And honestly, it's going to be something that Ime is going to have to feel out because there truly wasn't that much double big until the last, 4 to 6 weeks of the season. I feel like really the last 3 or 4, and then the playoffs.
It started against this team, actually, Dallas.
Yeah. But that was one like in February, and then they didn't even start doing it regularly until like mid-March. So in terms of how it's going to work when teams can scout it and draw up exactly how they want to attack it. And, say what you will about the Warriors, they're a very good team, but they're not the most athletic across the board. I think some of these teams that have more athletes, a little more quickness can test you in ways that even in the playoffs, the Warriors couldn't. And someone else pointed out in the chat, it's tougher to run the zone without Jabari. That's also true. You lose Jabari as, the rim protector who can slide over from the weak side, and you also lose his length in the zone. So without Jabari, you missed him on multiple levels tonight. But yeah, I just thought that was sort of the give and take. Like Alperen Sengun had a very good game offensively, especially down the stretch when they needed him to be great. Mm-hmm. But honestly, the bar was very high because, Sengun and honestly, the double big was targeted on the defensive end, and that's a big part of how the Mavs sort of stayed in striking distance for a lot of this game. So give and take, and fortunately, the one thing you can ask, even if it's a bad night, you just need to find a way to make the plays when it mattered most, and that's what Sengun did tonight. And, I think going forward, a big question for this team is going to be how they handle situations late in the half court when opposing defenses want to take Kevin Durant out of this game. Because one thing I thought was very noteworthy tonight, even on a night when Kevin had almost nothing going in through the first 3 quarters, he even had a wide open 3, no one within like 10 or 15 feet of him in the third that he missed. Very un-KD-like. Yeah, exactly. It happens to everybody over 82 games. But then as soon as he made those 2 threes about midway through the fourth quarter, you saw Dallas started sending a second defender, and anytime KD got the ball, they were not going to let him beat them. So there's more you can do off ball. Maybe you can send him around some screens. But I also think you've got to get more comfortable initiating offense through those other 4 players. And sometimes you can use KD to draw that second defender and then quickly attack 4-on-3. Like we saw this early in the James Harden, Russell Westbrook year, where James was coming off the unguardable tour and he would draw the second defender so easily. And it took the Rockets half a season to figure out, and also shipping out Clint Capella for Robert Covington, how exactly they wanted to attack the backside in those scenarios. Well, the good news now, like, you do have some of the same limitations in that, Sengun and Amin, there are some shooting questions, but you also have more than one playmaker. Like, you look at that 2020 team, one of the problems was that, outside of Harden, there was Russ, who was already on his decline, and not much else in terms of how you could create. With that closing lineup tonight, you have both Sengun and Amin. The question is how you can get them both going in the same action so the defense has more to account for. We saw that, there was one possession where Sengun fed a cutting Amin, and Rockets actually got a little bit lucky. I thought the pass was tipped, but, Amin got it and did, to his credit, finish. So they're working on it, but it's going to take some time. And I think that's the big thing. And it goes back to what we saw that opening week when, KD had huge numbers against the Pistons. He had a big first 3 quarters in Oklahoma City. And then we saw late in those games, they made it clear that the opposing defense, that is, that they're not going to allow Kevin Durant to beat them. So what do the Rockets turn to in the half court? I thought it was better tonight. Again, the overall numbers don't lie. The final 7 minutes, they had, 21 points. So you can't complain about that. But at the end of the day, like, that's how they're going to be tested. There were some rocky moments. To their credit, they adjusted. And, I'll give Sengun his flowers for that. Like, it wasn't a perfect game by any stretch. The free throws are also something that, hopefully he's closer to the 80% that he was almost at entering this game, as opposed to below 70% the last 2 years. So even on a night when Sengun was struggling, he found a way to put it together late. That's a good sign. He needs to continue doing it, because I think what we saw tonight was that if Kevin Durant shows you anything, opposing defenses are not going to let him beat you down the stretch of a game, or not let him beat them. And so it's up to the other Rockets to make those plays.
Yeah, and in fairness, KD's been amazing. I know we were joking around about this when people thought we were hating on KD. Nothing could be further from the truth. The guy is shooting just under 69% true shooting coming into this game. He has been unbelievable. The reason the Rockets, through 5 games going into this game, I don't know if they will be after tonight, but coming into this game, they were the number 1 offense, number 1 3-point shooting. That's because of KD. I mean, KD is, first and foremost, he's been amazing. And, just tonight, like you said, just had an off night. Tari Eason has been really good. I don't have the numbers in front of me with tonight's updated stuff, but 3 for 5 from 3 tonight. He's had several games now where he's hitting multiple threes. He looks comfortable shooting that. I would never have called him a good 3-point shooter before. I call him like solid, average, whatever you want to call it. His strength is that elite defense and just sort of chaos that he brings. But he's been good there as well. Amin had just some really crazy plays tonight. I mean, if you guys did not see this clip, I got to play it for you, because there was a basically off of his own free throw tonight. He grabs the offensive rebound, dumps it, kicks it to Sengun. Sengun throws it back to him and throws down a reverse alley-oop dunk. Yeah. It's basically gone viral. It's just insane. And of course, he also had the, I'll play here for you as well, the block on Cooper Flag to basically seal it. Yeah. Rockets up 6 here. They go the other way and basically, put this thing away. So, Amin, he had like you mentioned, like that fast break drive late, where really, I think there was a little over 2 minutes left, really needed to finish that layup. Couldn't do it. It was going a little bit too fast. But he had another play where he drove to the basket, just bowled his way there. You can see the vision with Amin as a point guard. I know there's been criticism of him, the ball handling and stuff of that nature. I mean, who cares? I think that's going to get better. He's so effective, so athletic. He's not a perfect point guard. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if he's like, anything in any means a traditional point guard, but like he's a guy you want to put the ball in his hands to make some things happen here and there. And I thought tonight he did a really excellent job. He was 8 of 12 for 20 points in the first half alone.
I thought it was noteworthy that Jason Kidd said pregame, a reporter asked him about Amin's defense, because Amin was going to get the assignment on Cooper Flag, and Kidd went out of his way to complement his offense, not just in terms of the off-ball actions that people became accustomed to seeing him do the last couple of years, but he referenced the ball handling, the driving, pressuring the rim, and what that does for the defense. And I think that's so important when we talk about this Rockets team and doing what they need to do down the stretch of the game. I sort of think, we'll see if the Rockets acknowledge this after the game, but I wonder if Amin was dealing with some cramping again. He took a hard fall in the third quarter and left the game for about 5 or 6 minutes, came back, and just by the eye test, he didn't look quite as explosive to me. And so I wonder if he didn't have quite the juice that he had in the first half of that game. Obviously, he had enough to stay in the game and was impactful, but I don't know if he was quite as explosive. Maybe that contributes to him going for layups instead of dunks. I noticed on a couple of his fast break sequences in the second half. So hopefully he's good to go.
And I think what maybe we were talking about it in real time at the time, I think what kind of tipped us off was Sengun was kind of getting targeted a little bit defensively, but they were still doing fine. But then he turned it over on that one drive attempt. Ime basically pulled him out of the game. Like it looked abnormal, just took Sengun out of the game and then quickly put Sengun back to take Amen out, which made us think maybe, as you said, he got injured.
Because Amen before got rejected at the rim, and it was one of those where he got met hard. There was some contact, and he stayed down for about 30 to 45 seconds, and a trainer didn't come out. It looked to me like maybe he was, just catching his breath, but there seemed to be some level of impact there, and the fact that he actually left the game for 5 or 6 minutes, even when he was playing so well, it made me wonder. I'll be curious to see if they acknowledge it in the next day or two. Obviously, it wasn't like it was in Oklahoma City where it was something that would keep him out of the game. But I do think that leaning into that ball handling and driving ability, to get back to what Jason Kidd was saying pregame, is really important, because when we're talking about Kevin Durant, I mean, the big difference between the current Rockets and last year's Rockets, even on a night that Kevin struggled to shoot, his impact was still there because he makes opposing defenses account for him at every level. The version of the Rockets from a year ago with Jalen Green, he wasn't a bad player, but he was a predictable player. And so even though he put up low 20s in points per game and he bumped the efficiency to at least a respectable level, it was basically threes and rim attacks. That's all it was. There was zero mid-range game. And so it was very easy for defenses to scheme and try to stop him as one of the top two options alongside Alperen and Sengun on the scouting report. Well, now that you've replaced Jalen Green with Kevin Durant, opposing defenses have to account for him basically anywhere from 0 to 30 feet. He will rise and fire. He's got the mid-range game, one of the best in NBA history. Now he's a better shooter. He's also taller. He has gifts. But beyond that, he has a much more diverse toolbox. He's a higher IQ guy, which some of that comes with experience. KD's 37. He uses that to his advantage. And so I give that background to say it makes the game a lot easier for his teammates. So if you're Amen Thompson, especially if it's high leverage possessions, and KD, no matter how he's shooting, is going to draw that type of attention from opposing defenses no matter where he is, then if you're ready to go, you can probably find a driving lane. And the same can be said for Alperen and Sengun. And so teams aren't going to want to let Kevin Durant beat them. But the good news is that no matter how Kevin plays, even if the ball isn't going in the bucket on a given night, that's going to give his teammates opportunities. And honestly, Dave, I felt like on a different night, the Rockets could have won this game by 20 plus. And maybe they should have, because they were favored by 12 and the Mavs were missing a lot of guys due to injury. So that's not saying that this was a wonderful performance. But I thought they were getting good looks throughout the game. They just weren't making them. Like, they had plenty of good opportunities. The shots just weren't going in. And finally, down the stretch of the game, they did. 21 points in the final 7 minutes. So that's how I'm sort of looking at it, is that they continue to get good looks. They trusted the process. Defensively, it sort of fits with the season as a whole. Like, offensively, tonight was an outlier shooting night. It happens. But defensively, look, they're still a much better offensive team than they have been a defensive team. That's what they're trying to figure out. And so offensively, they figured it out. Defensively, sort of. Give a ton of credit to Josh Okogie, by the way, who left with, a knee injury, came back, gutted it out, had a couple of huge rebounds and loose balls that he secured down the stretch of the game. But I just think this was a game where offensively almost everything went wrong, but Kevin Durant has so much gravity, and there's so much combined playmaking potential between the big three of KD, Sengun, and Amen that give it 48 minutes, and you'll probably be able to figure it out. And Dallas, for all their weaknesses, they are a top 10 defense. They're missing a lot of playmaking on offense, but defensively, they're still respectable. They're well coached. They play hard. And the Rockets still found ways when it mattered most to make plays offensively. And so that's why I think in the big picture, unless you see a sustained bad shooting stretch, and we're not nearly there yet, I'm not as worried about that. Defensively, I think, that's the big question. It's just, in a perfect world, you'd bully the hell out of every team the way you did Toronto and out-rebound them 64-29. But if you give up a lot of threes and you let teams hang around, what's the balance there? To me, that's the big question with this team.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out as well. It's going to be a nightly shout out, I'm sure, to Steven Adams, because this guy, 9 boards tonight, 20-something minutes. It's not anything abnormal for him, but I was just watching this game, and it has to be demoralizing to be a Mavs fan or any other fan of whoever the Rockets are playing, to work so hard in that half court defense to stop something. KD, Sengun, Amen, Jabari, to get that miss, and in comes Steven Adams. If he doesn't get the board, he draws a foul on somebody. That is because they're just trying to keep him off the boards. It's crazy the impact that he has. I just want to give him that shout out. And also Sengun, we were talking about the defense. That's, one thing, but he has been so good really throughout his career, but especially this year at finding cutters and finding that Amen or Tari in that dunker spot. If the double comes to Sengun, he reads things really well. And so, I got to give a shout out to him. I think when he finished with 6 assists tonight, but it just felt like more, to be totally honest with you. I want you set the stage for what I want to talk about just briefly. We're not going to hammer Reed Shepherd tonight, but we got to talk about him because he did play real minutes tonight. I mean, down the stretch. And that might have been because of what you said about Okogie, and I believe it was the 4th, might have been late 3rd, but he gets hurt. It looks like it's his knee on a drive. Comes out of the game. I believe that's why Reed was playing at that point in time. I mean, Reed's in the rotation, but in a really close game in the 4th, I wasn't sure we'd see him.
And we saw Ime wiggle a little bit by playing the Aaron Holiday card that he had not in the first 5 games.
Correct. And that seemed to be a little bit of an admission. But, I don't remember how much time was left, but he put the Rockets up 9 with this nice kind of coming off the left wing, driving kind of floater off the glass, put the Rockets up 9. You're like, great. And then he made some really bad blunders. And just like that, Rockets were only up by 2. He comes out of the game. Okogie's okay. We hope Okogie's okay. Or if Ime was like, I don't care if you're okay, get in there. We need trouble. We're in trouble. But basically, Reed is just a work in progress. He had a couple of nice plays. He knocked down a 3 and had that one shot, but really some bad turnovers, some bad plays, and he couldn't be trusted down the stretch.
And he was 1 of 4 from 3. And I think there's a link between the excessive risk he takes on defense and whether the threes are going in. Because I think he's a guy who knows he needs to hit some home runs to offset the issues that he's going to have with his lack of size, lack of experience, the issues with physicality that he often has. I mean, other teams hunt him. It is what it is. You just hope that he offsets it in other areas. And if he's making threes, I think he tends to play. This is just by the eye test. But to me, it seems like he plays a little more composed, like he knows he's still providing value. But when he's missing threes, it feels like he gets even more handsy and at times a little bit reckless with the risk he takes defensively and then offensively, some of the, wild mid-range shots or running hooks, whatever you want to call them, that he takes. Like, it just feels like he knows at this point in his career, he needs to get some home runs. And the simplest way for him to get home runs, just make threes. And he did the other night in Boston. And for the season overall, small sample, but his overall clip is still good from 3. So hopefully he just continues to trust that and it evens out. But tonight, when the threes aren't going in, then it just feels like he then tries to do a little bit too much defensively and it just sort of spirals. And I wonder if Okogie doesn't get hurt, does Reed play at all in the second half, or does he play more than like 2 or 3 minutes? Like, I'm sure he would have gotten a cameo, but I don't think you would have seen him all that much. One other point guard rant I want to get to before we close out the show, Dave.
Yeah.
And I hope after tonight's game, people will take a deep breath. It feels like every game, one way or the other, has been this constant Fred VanVleet referendum, because I think just the shock value that happening right before training camp, there was this overreaction nationally thinking that without Fred, the season was potentially over,
the Rockets season,
that they couldn't overcome it. And then as soon as, the last 3 games, the Rockets win big, they have number 1 offense in the league. I've seen on social media a little bit of an overcorrection the other way. It's people saying, oh, you spread too much of a ball stopper. Does this show that he's not as good or not as important as we thought? No, I mean, you can also look at tonight. The Rockets definitely could have used another shooter. I just think comparing last year's team to this year's team is very dangerous, especially for a point guard that handles the ball a decent bit, like Fred or anyone else for that matter. Because last year's team, look, it comes down to the modern NBA advantage generators. Like, one reason why I don't get too bogged down in the who's the point guard discussions. Look, at the end of the game, you want to get the ball in the half court to your best playmakers. And tonight, the Rockets were running a point center, and it worked to close out that game. This is not the 1990s NBA where you have John Stockton like point guards running, pick and roll. We have long past that point. So for me, it's all about context. And last year's team, the two advantage generators were Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Jalen Green was very limited. He was a little more predictable. And so there were a lot of possessions where Fred got the ball late in the shot clock. And yeah, it was an inefficient shot, but he just sort of had to put it up because what the hell else was he going to do? It's the clock's running down and he's got the ball in his hands because he's the point guard. He's the primary ball handler. And so he'd have to, bail them out. This year, because you have so many more advantage generators, most notably Kevin Durant, but I think Alperen Sengun's gotten a little bit better overall from threes and from the free throw line, which makes teams on paper a little more reluctant to foul him, perhaps. Like, those two have gotten better. Jabari Smith is better at attacking closeouts. I know he wasn't there tonight, but on the balance, he's been there. The handles look better. Tari's look good from three. So I think overall, you have a much more dynamic offense. The most important piece of that is the attention that Kevin Durant draws. And so because of that, because you are generating advantages much earlier in the shot clock and much more easily, you also have Amen Thompson getting more comfortable as a ball handler and pushing the pace. So you have more possessions where you can run offense before the opposing defense is entirely set. And so because of that, the role of a point guard in this offense, or whatever the guard is, whatever you want to call it, be it Aaron Holiday or Reed Shepherd right now, Fred VanVleet whenever he comes back this season or next, like, those guys are getting a much better quality of looks now than they did last season. So the people that are sort of tripping on Fred and using this hot start offensively as a referendum on him, just as it was, overcooked, this idea that the Rockets were doomed without Fred, I also think it's overcooked that, oh, well, this proves you don't need Fred because of how well you're executing offensively now. No, I think they're executing better offensively now just because you're not getting into very many terrible situations, period, because you have enough advantage generators that you're just in a much better spot overall.
Yeah, I think that's right. And obviously I subscribe to theory like, Fred's the one guy you can't lose, and he is very valuable. Don't get me wrong. But I think, you've been on top of this early on, and I think you were right. I think they're going to fill this in just different ways. And the results, we're still very early in the season. Obviously tonight's going to bring the Rockets down, but the results are there. It was very weird to see Eric Pincus, and I don't mean in any way to single him out, but he writes for Bleacher Report talking about a trade to save the KD era in Houston when we're 5 games in and the Rockets have the number one offense in the league. Again, it's early, but, and it's a proposal to get Derek White, which is, Fred, Reed Shepherd, and 2 basically Rockets picks, unprotected, I assume, which is very, very, very expensive. Even though we know the Rockets do love Derek White, and he doesn't have to save the Rockets. He's a point guard. He's a versatile player in a variety of ways you could use, but the Rockets feel like, they lost something with Fred, but right now they're filling it. And this is what I will say. Ben said this to me as soon as the Fred news broke is, let's see, because, this is going to put Amen into a situation where he's going to grow rapidly and Reed Shepherd as well. I think Amen's really thriving. Reed's just a little bit behind, but you can see the potential with him as well. So yeah. I'm looking forward to this. By the way, the San Antonio game, which we've all been looking forward to, Dylan Harper is going to miss that game. He's out weeks now with a calf injury. We're not crying. The Rockets have plenty of injuries on their own. I'm just pointing that out, that we won't see them at full strength necessarily either. This is a rookie we're talking about, but he's been very, very good. That's coming up. We do have a Memphis game between now and then, and there's a bunch of drama going on with them with John Morant and everything. But I'm just going to keep mentioning this until that game happens, Ben. I am really looking forward to that San Antonio game. I would love to see the Rockets win that game just to get this rivalry cranked up another notch.
And to put a bow on the Fred VanVleet discussion, where the Rockets miss Fred VanVleet the most is actually on defense, where he's so steady, he's so high IQ, he's such a good communicator. And I think that's the overall biggest challenge for this team. Even with all their issues tonight, let's close by looking at the bigger picture. They still put up 110 points. And when it mattered most, they scored 21 points in the final 7 minutes of that game. And they made plays down the stretch. Their big guns, most notably KD and Sengun, the top two, they delivered when you needed them to down the stretch of that game. So it wasn't pretty, but even on a night when so many things went wrong, they were still good enough offensively that I think they beat a lot of teams. It's defensively where that's going to be the challenge. And, you know, we talked about running zone, especially without Jabari, the double bigs, the threes the Mavs hit that kept them in it. And honestly, the Mavs didn't hit that many threes. If the Mavs have a good shooting night, maybe we're having a little bit of a different conversation because the Rockets lose the game. But that's where the challenge is going to be, replacing Fred, leading into the double big more, teams trying to challenge Alperen and Sengun. That's going to be like the big in terms of, do the Rockets actually have a chance to win a championship this year? To me, that's going to be the big question. The offense is going to be fine. Are they literally the best in the league the way they were at least rated before tonight? I don't know about that, but they're really, really good. And Kevin Durant's going to, assuming health, assure that they're fine there. It's the defensive end of the court where, for multiple reasons, that's where I think the big test is going to be. It hasn't been terrible so far. I think they're still in the top half of the league, so it's not a disaster by any means. But, you know, definitely some questions that, you know, I just want to see them in bigger games. You mentioned San Antonio on Sunday, Milwaukee on Sunday. Those are two road games on the road. You know, big-time front court players in Wemby and Giannis. Let's see how they fare. Like, defensively, again, not raising any alarm bells, nothing crazy, no siren emojis, but you know, mixed bag. And, you know, all in all, 4-2 is probably where they should be. And, you know, that's where, for me, I come out of it feeling pretty satisfied. Like, I don't know if they necessarily deserve to win, but they didn't deserve to be 0-2 either. And so all in all, it comes out of wash. 4-2 is probably where they should be. And it's a good spot to be in before this road trip and before the schedule starts to get a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely. Is Memphis Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay. We'll be back on Wednesday. That's Ben DuBose. Ben, always a pleasure, man. This is always fun to do this. We will be back for Wednesday night's game against the Grizzlies. And then, like I said, after that, the Spurs are on deck. So appreciate everybody supporting Clutch Fans and all the videos we've been doing. Thank you guys and have a great night.